Perfect? I told my daughter-in-law Vanessa when she announced that 28 members of her family were coming to spend Christmas at my house. I'm going to Palm Springs. You all can handle the cooking and cleaning. I am not the help. Her face drained of color like she'd seen a ghost, but what she didn't know was that the real shock was just beginning. My name is Patricia. I am 63 years old, and for the last 6 years, I have been treated like hired staff in my own home. It all started when my son Daniel married that woman. From day one, Vanessa decided I was her personal assistant. Patricia, bring me some tea. Patricia, tidy this up. Patricia, prepare dinner for my friends. And I, like an idiot, always complied. I thought it was how I could maintain family harmony, but I had reached my breaking point. That Wednesday in December, Vanessa waltzed into my kitchen as she always did, without knocking, wearing that phony smile I'd grown to hate. She had on an absurdly expensive emerald dress, undoubtedly bought with my son's money. Her stilettos tapped against my tile floor like tiny daggers piercing my last nerve. "Patricia," she said in that patronizing voice she saved just for me, "I have wonderful news. My entire family is flying in for Christmas here. It's just 28 people. Just 28 people. As if that were nothing. As if I were a robot, programmed for hospitality and service." I saw the malice sparkling in her eyes as she unveiled her grand scheme. She settled into my kitchen chair, crossed her legs with theatrical flourish, and began rattling off names like she was reading a shopping list. "I've already confirmed with my sister Camilla, my cousin Jasmine, my brother-in-law Andre, my uncle Fernando. Everyone's coming. My nieces and nephews will be here. My second cousin's Camilla's children. It's going to be a magical Christmas." She paused dramatically, waiting for my usual panicked response. "Naturally, you'll manage everything. The food, the cleaning, the table service." Her words struck me like physical blows. I remembered all the times I'd prepared elaborate dinners for her socialite friends while she claimed all the praise. All the times I'd cleaned up after her soirees while she slept until noon. All the times I'd been rendered invisible in my own house. "We'll need at least 4 turkeys," she continued, dismissing my silence. "And that raspberry cheesecake you make. Oh, and you'll need to decorate the entire house. I want it picture perfect for social media posts." She waited for my standard, "Yes, Vanessa." But this time was different. This time, something inside me had shattered irreparably. I looked her straight in the eye with a composure that surprised even me. "Perfect," I repeated, watching her smile start to crack. "It will be a perfect Christmas for you all, because I won't be here." The silence that followed was deafening. Vanessa blinked repeatedly as if her ears had deceived her. Her mouth fell open, but no sound emerged. The clicking of her heels stopped abruptly. "What do you mean you won't be here?" she finally managed to stammer, her voice quivering slightly. She straightened in the chair, her perfect posture beginning to crumble. "Exactly what you heard. I'm going to Palm Springs for the holidays. You can all cook, clean, and serve yourselves. I am not your employee." I watched the blood drain completely from her face. Her hands began trembling. The coffee cup she was clutching clinked against its saucer. For the first time in 6 years, Vanessa was speechless. But Patricia," she stuttered. "I already told everyone to come. Everything's arranged. You can't do this." "Of course I can. It's my house." Those 5 words detonated like a bomb in the kitchen. Vanessa's jaw dropped, her expression shifting from shock to indignation. She sprang up from the chair, her heels clicking again, but this time with desperation. "This is absurd. Daniel won't stand for this. Daniel can have whatever opinion he wants, but my decision is final." For the first time, I was in control. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that my decision wasn't impulsive. I had been orchestrating this for months, and I had my reasons. Reasons that would soon leave them all stunned. Vanessa's expression transformed from shock to fury within seconds. Her cheeks flushed crimson, and her eyes narrowed like a predator about to strike. She stepped toward me, invading my personal space as she always did when trying to intimidate me. "You know what, Patricia? I always suspected you were selfish, but this is unconscionable." Her voice turned venomous, each word dripping with contempt. "My family is traveling from across the country, some internationally, and you're going to destroy their Christmas over a tantrum?" A tantrum? 6 years of mistreatment, humiliation, and emotional abuse, and she called it a tantrum. I felt rage surge in my chest, but I remained composed. I had learned to control my emotions after so long as her victim. "That's not my problem," I replied with a calm that rattled her even more. "You should have consulted me before inviting 28 people to my house." "Our house," she shrieked, losing her composure entirely. "Daniel is your son. This house will be ours eventually." There it was, the truth that had always lurked in the shadows but had never been spoken aloud. Vanessa didn't see me as family. She saw me as a temporary obstacle before inheriting everything I had built through years of hard work and sacrifice. "Interesting perspective," I murmured, watching her pupils dilate with panic as she realized what she'd exposed. "Very interesting indeed." At that moment, I heard keys in the front door. Daniel was home from the office. Vanessa ran to him like a child running to tattle, her heels clattering with desperate urgency. "Daniel! Daniel! Your mother has lost her mind. She says she won't help with Christmas. She says she's going to Palm Springs and abandoning us with my entire family." I heard their muffled voices from the living room. Vanessa spoke frantically, her tone sharp and theatrical. Daniel murmured responses I couldn't distinguish. After several minutes, their footsteps approached the kitchen. My son appeared in the doorway, his suit rumpled after a long day at work, his face exhausted but irritated. Behind him, Vanessa followed like a shadow, arms crossed and a triumphant expression on her face. She clearly expected him to put me in my place. "Mom," Daniel began in that condescending tone he'd adopted since his marriage, "Vanessa told me about your decision. Don't you think you're being a bit dramatic?" Dramatic? My own son was calling me dramatic for refusing to be his wife's unpaid servant. I felt something cold and hard settle in my chest, something that had been growing for months finally crystallized in that moment. "No, Daniel, I'm not being dramatic, I'm being clear. But Mom, it's Christmas. It's a time for family. Vanessa already invited everyone. We can't cancel now." "I didn't say to cancel. I said I won't be here." Vanessa stepped forward, positioning herself between Daniel and me like a human shield. "See what I mean? She's become completely irrational." "What will my family think? What am I supposed to tell them?" "Tell them the truth," I answered calmly. "That you assumed I would be your servant without asking me, and that you were mistaken." Daniel sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair as he did when frustrated. "Mom, be reasonable. You know Vanessa can't cook for 28 people alone." "And why not? I've cooked for her parties for years. It's time she learned." "But I have a career," Vanessa protested. "I can't take days off to cook. My job is important." Her career, a part-time position at a luxury boutique she'd probably secured through Daniel's connections. But of course, her career was more important than my time, my energy, my dignity. "Then hire a catering company," I suggested with a sweet smile. "There are many excellent options in Los Angeles." "Catering costs a fortune," Daniel exclaimed. "Why spend thousands when you can?" He stopped abruptly, realizing what he was about to say. "When I can do it for free, I finished for him. Like always. Like the employee you think I am." The silence stretched between us like a widening chasm. Vanessa and Daniel exchanged nervous glances. I could see the wheels turning in their heads, searching for a way to manipulate me into surrendering. "Look, Mom," Daniel said finally, adopting a softer tone. "I know you've been a bit sensitive lately. Maybe you're going through—" "Don't you dare," I interrupted, my voice steel. "Don't you dare reduce this to hormones." He was trying to dismiss me as a hysterical menopausal woman. The fury I had been containing began to boil beneath the surface, but I managed to keep my voice steady. "There is nothing hormonal about this, Daniel. This is about one very clear thing: respect. And for 6 years, Neither you nor your wife has shown me any." "That's not true," Vanessa protested. "We've always treated you well. You're part of the family that serves, cleans and cooks while you two enjoy yourselves, the part that's never consulted but always expected to obey." Daniel moved closer, placing a hand on my shoulder as he used to as a boy when he wanted something. But he was no longer the sweet child I'd raised. He was a man who had chosen his wife over his mother in every conflict for the past 6 years. "All right, Mom. I understand you're upset, but think about it. It's just 1 week. Then everything goes back to normal. Normal. They're normal where I was invisible except when they needed me, where my feelings didn't matter as long as their life was comfortable, where my house had ceased to be my sanctuary and had become their personal resort. No, Daniel, things are not going back to normal, because I'm leaving tomorrow." They both froze. Vanessa was the first to react, her voice rising an octave. "Tomorrow? Tomorrow?" "Tomorrow," I confirmed, savouring the panic that began gleaming in their eyes. "I already have everything arranged." What they didn't know was that I truly did have everything arranged, just not in the way they imagined. "This is insane," Vanessa shrieked, her eyes wild as she paced my kitchen like a caged animal. "You can't leave tomorrow. It's impossible. My family arrives in 4 days." "You should have considered that before taking me for granted," I replied, maintaining my serene tone as I calmly washed my coffee cup. Every movement was calculated to show that her histrionics didn't affect me. Daniel stood there shifting nervously from one foot to the other, clearly torn between supporting his hysterical wife and trying to reason with me. His eyes darted between us as if watching a high-stakes tennis match. "Mom, please," he finally murmured. "At least tell us where you're going. When will you be back?" "I'm going to visit my sister in Scottsdale," I lied smoothly. "And I'll be back after New Year's." The lie came so naturally it surprised even me, but it was necessary. They couldn't know my real plans. Not yet. "After New Year's?" Vanessa practically choked on her words. But what are we supposed to do? I already told everyone to come. My uncle Fernando already bought his plane tickets from Mexico City. Camilla cancelled her vacation plans. Andre took time off work. Those are their problems, not mine. I saw desperation begin to replace the rage on Vanessa's face. Her perfectly manicured hands trembled as she gripped the marble countertop, her knuckles white from the pressure. "Patricia," her voice suddenly changed, becoming syrupy and manipulative. "You know I've always thought of you as a second mother. You're so important to me, to us. You can't just abandon us like this." There it was, the shift in tactics from fury to emotional manipulation. I had witnessed this performance many times before, but it no longer worked on me. "If you truly considered me a mother, you wouldn't treat me like hired help." "But I don't treat you like hired help. I just thought you enjoyed cooking for the family. I thought you liked feeling needed." Needed. That word pierced me like a dagger. For 6 years, I had believed that being needed was my way of keeping the peace, of securing a place in my son's life. But now I understood that being needed had only made me a shadow in my own home. "You know what, Vanessa? You're right. I do like feeling needed. That's why I'm going to be needed by myself for the first time in years." Daniel intervened again, his frustration now evident in every line on his face. "Mum, this isn't fair. You know we don't have the money to hire caterers for 28 people. The down payment on the new condo wiped out our savings." A new condo. This was the first I was hearing about a new condo. My eyes narrowed as I processed this information. Since when were they planning to move? And why hadn't they told me? "What new condo?" I asked, my voice laced with dangerous curiosity. Vanessa and Daniel exchanged a guilty look, the kind of look you share when you've just revealed something meant to be kept secret. "Well," Daniel began, looking down at his shoes, "we were going to tell you after the holidays. We found an amazing place in Santa Monica. 4 bedrooms, ocean view, rooftop terrace." "Sounds expensive," I observed, keeping my tone neutral though my mind was racing. "Well, yes. but it's a solid investment. And don't worry, we're not moving far. Only 40 minutes from here? 40 minutes. Close enough to continue using my house as their personal restaurant, but far enough to have their privacy. How convenient. And how do you plan to pay for it? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Vanessa's face suddenly brightened as if she'd found the perfect solution to all our problems. That's exactly why it's so important we have a perfect Christmas. My Uncle Fernando is extremely generous when he's impressed. And my brother-in-law Andre has connections in commercial real estate. If everything goes well, they could help us with Daniel's consulting business expansion. There it was, the real reason behind the grand Christmas celebration. It wasn't about family or tradition, it was about money, about impressing wealthy relatives to secure financial favors. And I was the cornerstone of their manipulation scheme. I see, I murmured, letting the silence hang as they both waited for my response. So you need your Christmas to be perfect to impress the wealthy family members? Exactly, Vanessa exclaimed, relieved that I finally grasped the gravity of the situation. I knew you'd understand. You're so perceptive, Patricia. You always know the right thing to do. The right thing. For 6 years, the right thing had been to sacrifice my comfort, my time, my dignity to make their lives easier. But now I had a completely different perspective on what was right. You're right, Vanessa. I know exactly what the right thing to do is. That's why my decision stands. I'm leaving tomorrow. The hope vanished from their faces like water down a drain. Vanessa began breathing rapidly, on the verge of hyperventilation. You can't do this. You can't destroy our future over a temper tantrum. It's not a tantrum. It's a well-considered decision. But what will my family think when they arrive, and there's no one here to greet them? What will they think when they see there's no food prepared? They'll think their niece invited them without having the capacity to be a host, and they'll be right. Daniel stepped closer, his desperation now palpable. Mom, please. If you really need a vacation, we can postpone it. After New Year's, you can go wherever you want, for as long as you want. We'll pay for your trip, the hotel, everything. They'd pay for my trip. With what money, I wondered, if the condo deposit had depleted their savings? But it didn't matter. Their offer was 6 years too late. The offer is tempting, Daniel, but my decision is made. This is emotional blackmail, Vanessa burst out, her mask of sweetness finally falling away completely. You're using our situation to manipulate us. Emotional blackmail. The words hung in the air like an unwitting confession. Because if I was engaging in emotional blackmail by refusing to be their free employee, what had they been doing for 6 years? You know what emotional blackmail is, Vanessa. It's making me feel guilty every time I don't want to cook for your socialite friends. It's telling me that a good mother-in-law always puts family first when I refuse to clean up after your parties. It's assuming my plans don't matter because I'm retired and have nothing better to do. Every word was a bullet hitting its mark. I saw them both flinch slightly with each accusation because they knew it was true. All of it was true. That's not the same thing, Vanessa stammered, but her voice had lost all its previous force. You're right. It's not the same. Because what you two have done is far worse. You've taken my generosity for granted for years. The kitchen fell into tense silence. I could hear the ticking of the wall clock, the hum of the refrigerator, Vanessa's ragged breathing. But what I could hear most clearly was the sound of my own approaching freedom. Because tomorrow everything would change, and they had no idea just how much. That night, while Vanessa and Daniel were still in the living room arguing in desperate whispers, I locked myself in my room and pulled out my laptop. It was time to set the second phase of my plan in motion, a plan that had been brewing for months, ever since I discovered something that changed my entire perspective on my dear daughter-in-law. 4 months earlier, while foolishly organising Daniel's home office, I had found a forgotten folder among his papers, filled with bank statements, printed emails, and legal documents. At first, I thought they were work papers, but something caught my eye. Vanessa's name appeared repeatedly in transactions I didn't understand. That night, after they went to sleep, I returned to the office and reviewed everything meticulously. What I found chilled me to the bone. Vanessa had been spending money they didn't have. A lot of money. Credit cards in Daniel's name that he knew nothing about, personal loans using the house as collateral, and compulsive shopping sprees at luxury stores that totaled over $65,000 in debt. But that wasn't all. I also found emails where Vanessa discussed with her friends how to manage Daniel so he wouldn't discover her spending, how to keep him distracted while she continued shopping, and most chilling of all, a message thread where she strategized to convince him to sell the house to invest in their future together. My house. The house I had lived in for 32 years. The house I had paid for with my work, my savings, my sacrifices. Vanessa wanted Daniel to sell it to pay off her compulsive shopping debts. That night I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake until dawn, processing the betrayal, the manipulation, the deceit. But along with the devastation, something else began to grow. A cold, calculated determination to protect myself. The next day, I began my own silent investigation. I hired a private detective, a discreet man my attorney had recommended years ago. I asked him to track all of Vanessa's financial activities. What we discovered was even worse than I had imagined. Not only was she a compulsive spender, but she had also been lying about her job. Her important career at the boutique was part-time, barely minimum wage, but she had been telling Daniel she earned 4 times that amount. Where did the extra money for her personal expenses come from? The secret credit cards, of course. And there was more. Vanessa had been telling her relatives that we were much wealthier than we actually were. She had told them that Daniel had a thriving consulting practice, that I had a considerable fortune, that our house was worth triple its actual value. All lies to maintain her image as a successful, well-married woman. Now, as I looked at my laptop screen in the quiet darkness of my room, I smiled for the first time in months, because I had taken steps they couldn't even imagine. First, I had moved all my savings to a new account at a different bank, an account Daniel knew nothing about and would never have access to. Then, I had consulted with my attorney about how to protect the house's deed. It turned out there were very effective legal ways to ensure no one could force me to sell it. But my masterstroke had been to contact Vanessa's family directly. Not all of them, just the ones who really mattered. Her uncle Fernando, the successful businessman from Mexico City. Her brother-in-law, Andre, the real estate agent who was supposedly going to help them. And her sister Camilla, who worked in corporate finance and had an impeccable reputation. I had sent them very polite emails introducing myself as Vanessa's concerned mother-in-law. I told them I was worried about the young couple's precarious financial situation and wanted to ask their advice on how to help. Of course, I had accidentally attached some of the most alarming bank statements I had found. The responses were immediate. Fernando was furious at being deceived about Vanessa's real situation. Andre immediately cancelled any plans for financial assistance. Camilla was so angry she threatened to come personally to straighten out her younger sister's life. But the best part was that none of them had said anything to Vanessa yet. They were waiting for the Christmas gathering to confront her in person. A gathering that would now be missing the host they expected, the food they were promised, and the festive atmosphere Vanessa had painted in her lies. My phone vibrated with a text message. It was from Fernando. Mrs. Patricia, after reviewing the documents you sent, my family and I have decided to arrive 2 days earlier than planned. We want to speak with Vanessa about some critical matters before the celebration. Would it be possible for you to receive us on the morning of the 22nd? The morning of the 22nd, exactly when I would be packing my bags for my trip to Scottsdale. What a perfect coincidence, I replied quickly. Of course, Fernando. It will be a pleasure to have you. However, I must inform you that I will be leaving for a trip that same day, so Vanessa and Daniel will be your hosts. His response came within seconds. Perfect. That will be exactly what we need. I closed the laptop and lay back in bed, smiling in the dark. For 6 years, I had been the silent victim, the submissive mother-in-law, the free employee. But all that time, I had been observing, learning, understanding how my daughter-in-law really operated. Vanessa thought she was so smart, so manipulative, so clever. But she had gravely underestimated the older woman who cleaned up her messes. She had assumed my age and apparent meekness meant I was helpless. Tomorrow morning, while she was still asleep, I would be packing my bags. Not for Scottsdale, as I had told them. My real destination was a luxury resort just 90 minutes away, where I had booked a suite with a desert view for the next 3 weeks. From there, I would have a front row seat to the collapse of the little kingdom of lies Vanessa had built. I would watch her family discover her deceptions. I would watch Daniel finally open his eyes to the woman he had married. I would watch her whole perfectly manipulated world fall apart piece by piece. And best of all, I wouldn't have to lift a finger to make it happen. Vanessa had dug her own grave with years of lies and deceit. I had simply taken the shovel out of her hands and shown her family where to look. Outside, I could hear that the argument in the living room had finally ended. Footsteps on the stairs, doors closing, the tense silence of a house full of unresolved conflicts. But I slept deeply that night. For the first time in 6 years, I slept with the smile of someone who knows that justice, even when delayed, always arrives. At 5:30 in the morning, my alarm sang like the anthem of freedom. I rose with an energy I hadn't felt in years. I showered peacefully and began to pack my bags. Every garment I folded was another step toward my independence. Every item I stored away was a silent declaration that I was no longer anyone's servant. Vanessa and Daniel were still asleep. I could hear their deep breathing from the hallway as I carried my suitcases down the stairs. I had prepared a note which I left on the kitchen table next to the spare house keys, a brief but precise note. I've decided to leave early for my trip. The house is in your hands. Enjoy your perfect Christmas. Patricia. What the note didn't mention was that I had made a few additional preparations before leaving, like completely emptying the pantry and refrigerator. After all, if they were going to host 28 people, they needed to learn to be responsible for buying food. I had also locked away all my fine china, my elegant tablecloths, and my Christmas decorations in my bedroom. If they wanted to impress the wealthy family, they would have to acquire their own supplies. But my final touch had been to cancel the cleaning service that came twice a week, a service I paid for, but for which Vanessa always took credit for maintaining a spotless home. Starting today, she could experience what it truly meant to keep a house clean on her own. The car service arrived promptly at 6:15. As the driver loaded my bags, I took one last look at the house, where I had lived for over 3 decades. A house that had been my sanctuary, then my prison, and now would once again be my fortress. Because even though I was leaving temporarily, this was still my house, and I had every intention of reclaiming it completely. The resort where I checked in was everything I had dreamed of during my years of forced domestic servitude. A spacious suite with a desert mountain view, 24-hour room service, a world-class spa, and most importantly, absolute silence. No one shouting for me from the kitchen. No one expecting me to appear with fresh coffee. No one assuming my time had no value. My phone started ringing at 11:23 in the morning. Daniel, of course. "Mom, where are you? We found your note, but why did you leave so early?" His voice sounded confused, still groggy. He had probably just discovered the empty pantry and the fact that no one was there to make his weekend breakfast. "Good morning, Daniel." I decided there was no point prolonging the inevitable. You two have a lot to do to prepare, and I'm very much looking forward to some rest. "But Mom, this is so sudden. Vanessa is, well, she's pretty upset." Upset. What a diplomatic way to say she was having a full-blown panic attack at the realization that she would actually have to take charge of her own life. "I'm sure she'll manage perfectly." After all, she's a very capable woman. There was a long pause. I could hear voices in the background, Vanessa speaking in a rapid, hysterical tone. "Could you at least tell us where you are in case of an emergency?" "I'm safe and in a good place. That's all you need to know." "Mom, please, I know you're angry, but this is extreme. Vanessa's family arrives in 3 days, and we don't know how." "Daniel," I interrupted him firmly, "you are 35 years old. Vanessa is 32. You are fully functional adults. I'm certain you can solve your own problems without relying on a 63-year-old woman." Another pause. This one longer. "Fine," he finally sighed. "But promise me you'll be okay. And when are you coming back?" "I'll be back when I'm ready. Enjoy your Christmas." I hung up before he could insist further. I immediately put my phone on silent mode. I knew the next few hours would be a constant bombardment of desperate calls and messages. But I had waited 6 years for this moment of peace. I wasn't going to let them ruin it. I ordered lobster bisque from room service, something I would never have cooked for myself because it would have seemed too extravagant by the standards of austerity Vanessa had imposed in my own home. As I ate slowly, savoring every bite, my phone blinked constantly with silence notifications. The best part was yet to come, because tomorrow morning, exactly as I had calculated, Vanessa's family would begin to arrive. They would not find the perfect Christmas she had promised them. Instead, they would find the raw reality of who the woman living on, lies for years, truly was. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I finally checked my messages. There were 23 missed calls from Daniel, 41 from Vanessa, and an avalanche of texts escalating from confusion to pleading to outrage. But the message I was truly interested in had arrived from Fernando at 1 o'clock. "Mrs. Patricia, my family and I will arrive tomorrow at 7:30 in the morning, as agreed. We look forward to meeting you personally and having that important conversation with Vanessa. Thank you for your hospitality." Hospitality? If only he knew that by 7:30 tomorrow, the only hospitality they would find would be Vanessa trying to explain why the house was empty, why there was no food, and why the generous mother-in-law she had boasted so much about had mysteriously disappeared. I replied to Fernando, "I regret to inform you that I had to move up my trip due to unexpected circumstances. Vanessa and Daniel will be delighted to host you. I'm sure you will have much to discuss." His response was immediate. "I understand perfectly. In fact, this might be for the best. Some conversations are better conducted privately." Private. Exactly what they needed. A private conversation between a woman who had been lying for years and a family that finally knew the truth about her financial deceptions. That afternoon, as I enjoyed a hot stone massage at the resort spa, I allowed myself to imagine the scene that would unfold tomorrow morning. Vanessa and Daniel waking up in a panic, making a frantic last-minute run to the grocery store, desperately trying to create the illusion of hospitality they had promised. And then, at 7:30 sharp, the sound of the doorbell announcing the arrival of the family who had come to collect on overdue debts. I couldn't help but smile as the massage therapist worked on the knots of tension that had been in my shoulders for 6 years. Knots that were finally beginning to unravel one by one, just like Vanessa's lies. The morning of the 22nd dawned with crystal clear skies, and my phone exploded with calls. I woke to the first call from Daniel at 6 o'clock in the morning. I didn't answer. While I leisurely ate smoked salmon eggs Benedict on my suite's terrace, I decided to check the voicemails. The first was from Daniel. "Mom, please pick up. Vanessa is hysterical. We don't know what to make for breakfast for 28 people. The grocery stores don't open until 8 o'clock, and the family arrives at exactly that time. We need help urgently. Please, please call us." The second was from Vanessa, her voice completely shattered. "Patricia, I know you're mad at me and I understand why, but please don't make me look bad in front of my family. They traveled from so far away. My uncle Fernando came from Mexico City. Camilla cancelled important business meetings. I don't know how to cook for this many people. I don't even know where to start. I promise we'll talk later and fix everything, but right now I desperately need your help." The third message was even better. Vanessa again, now sobbing. Patricia, I just checked the pantry and refrigerator. Everything is empty. Why is there nothing? How am I supposed to feed my family? Where is the good china? Where are the Christmas tablecloths? Please, at least just tell me where you put everything. Just that, please. Ah, yes. The dawning realization that running a household requires planning, effort, and actual money. The tardy understanding that food doesn't magically appear in refrigerators, that tables don't set themselves, that decorations don't install themselves by magic. But the message I was truly waiting for arrived at 7:05 in the morning. It was from a voice I didn't recognize, but it spoke with authority. Mrs. Patricia, this is Fernando, Vanessa's uncle. We arrived at the airport early and decided to come straight to your house. We expect to be there in 20 minutes. I'm very much looking forward to meeting you and having that conversation we've been planning. Perfect. They would arrive at the peak of Vanessa and Daniel's panic. At 8:35, my phone rang. This time I answered. Mom. Daniel's voice was trembling, on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Can you talk? Good morning, Daniel. Of course I can talk. How is your morning going? Mom, please don't do this. Vanessa's family just arrived and we have nothing to offer them. Literally nothing. Vanessa is crying, locked in the bathroom, and I don't know what to do. Have you explained the situation to them? What situation? How do I explain that my mother decided to go on vacation right when we needed her most? When they needed me most? Not when I needed respect or understanding or a simple thank you for 6 years of service. Only when they needed me. Tell them the truth, Daniel, that for 6 years you took for granted that I would be your unpaid domestic servant and that I finally decided I deserved a vacation. There was a pause. I could hear voices in the background, a mix of panic and confusion. Someone was speaking sternly, probably Fernando, asking where the primary hostess was. At least can you tell us where you always bought the food? What you used to make for special occasions? Anything to help? Daniel, I didn't always buy anything. I planned weeks in advance. I researched recipes, made detailed lists, compared prices, and dedicated entire days to preparation. It wasn't magic, it was work. A lot of work. The silence on the other end told me he was finally beginning to grasp the magnitude of what he had ignored for years. Look, he continued, his voice smaller. I know we've been inconsiderate, but right now I need practical solutions. What do I do with 28 hungry people in my living room? Order takeout, call restaurants, go to the supermarket, do what all responsible adults do when they have guests. But it's the holidays. Everything is closed or swamped. The restaurants have no availability. Then maybe you should have thought of that before inviting 28 people without consulting the person you expected to do all the work. I heard a new voice in the background, a serious, commanding tone. Fernando was clearly demanding an explanation. Mom, Vanessa's uncle wants to talk to you. He says he needs to understand what's going on. I would love to talk to him, but I'm on vacation. Tell him Vanessa can explain everything perfectly. After all, she's the one who organized this gathering. Please, Mom, just 5 minutes. He's very confused and somewhat upset. I think he can help us resolve this. Help us. Again. It was always about helping them. Never about what I needed, what I deserved, or how they had made me feel for years. Kevin listened to me very carefully. For 6 years, every time you needed something, I was there. Every time Vanessa wanted to impress someone, I did the work. Every time you had problems, I was the solution. Today, for the first time in half a decade, you have to solve your own problems. And that is not my responsibility. But it's my family, he finally shouted, losing his composure. I heard Fernando's clear voice in the background. Young man, I need to understand what kind of family gathering you organize. Where is the woman of the house? Where is the grandmother who invited us? Fernando had clearly understood from his conversations with Vanessa that I was the matriarch who organized these events. the primary hostess, the person responsible for the family's hospitality. And now there was no one, just two confused adults finally facing the consequences of their own choices. Mum, please at least talk to him. Explain that there's been a misunderstanding. There is no misunderstanding, Daniel. There is a reality you refused to see for years. And that reality is that without mutual respect, there is no functional family. I hung up. This time I turned the phone off completely. It was time for the next phase. I went down to the resort's business center. It was time to deploy the most delicious part of my plan. I sat at a computer and opened my email. I had several new messages from Vanessa's family. The first was from Camila, the financially responsible sister. Dear Patricia, we've just arrived at your house and the situation is quite confusing. Vanessa told us you left for an emergency, but we don't understand why the house seems uninhabited. There is no food, no Christmas preparations, and frankly, Vanessa's behavior is very strange. Could we speak by phone? The second message was from Fernando, his tone considerably more serious. Mrs. Patricia, I respect that you had to travel for an emergency, but I need to understand what is happening in this house. Vanessa cannot coherently explain why the food she promised isn't here, why there are no Christmas decorations, or even why she didn't know you would be gone. This doesn't align at all with the family picture she painted for us. Please contact me urgently. Perfect. It was exactly the opening I had been waiting for. I replied to both emails with a carefully constructed message. Dear Fernando and Camilla, I deeply apologize for the confusion. I was forced to move up my trip due to circumstances I would rather not discuss over email. However, I believe it's important for you to understand Vanessa and Daniel's true situation before continuing with any Christmas plans. The documents I previously sent you reflect only part of the financial reality. If you truly wish to help Vanessa, I suggest you have a very frank conversation with her about her spending habits and her unrealistic expectations regarding family support. Sincerely, Patricia. I sent the message and waited. I didn't have to wait long. 25 minutes later, my hotel room phone rang. It was the front desk. Mom, you have a long-distance call. Mr. Fernando says it's urgent. Put him through, please. Fernando's voice was tense but controlled. Mrs. Patricia, thank you for taking my call. I need to ask you some direct questions about my niece. Of course, Fernando. I'm listening. First, is it true that Vanessa has been asking you to cook and clean for all her family gatherings? That is correct. For the last 6 years, every time you have visited or she has had guests, I have handled all the preparations. And when she told us about the elaborate dinners and perfect events, was she organizing them or were you? I planned everything from scratch. Vanessa took the credit. There was a long pause. I could hear voices in the background, clearly Fernando arguing with someone. Second question, the financial statements you sent us, are they authentic? Completely authentic. I obtained them directly from my son's personal files. And does Vanessa know you discovered her debts? Until today, she had no idea I knew about her secret spending or her lies about her income. I see. His voice had turned to ice. One more question. Why did you decide to leave at this exact moment? Because I grew tired of being treated like hired help in my own house. Vanessa assumed I would cook for 28 people without even asking if I was available or willing. The silence that followed was long and tense. Finally, Fernando spoke, his voice dripping with disappointment and contained anger. Mrs. Patricia, my family owes you an apology. Vanessa has been lying to us for years. She painted a picture of a prosperous family where she was the perfect organizer. She asked us for financial help to expand Daniel's consulting business when apparently the money was meant to pay off her compulsive shopping debts. I'm afraid so. And we, like fools, were ready to help because we believed she had proven herself to be responsible and successful, when in reality, you have been the one keeping everything running while she took the credit. Well, Now you know. And let me tell you, my family does not tolerate this kind of deceit. Vanessa is going to have some very serious explaining to do. Fernando, if I may suggest something, I think it would be beneficial for Vanessa to face the natural consequences of her decisions. She has lived in a bubble of privilege where others solved her problems. Perhaps it's time for her to learn to be truly independent. I completely agree. In fact, I have some news for her that is going to change her perspective drastically. The supposed financial support she was expecting from the family for her husband's business expansion, that was entirely dependent on her demonstrating fiscal responsibility and transparency. After seeing these documents and the current situation, I can assure you there will be no support. My smile widened. I understand. But there's more. My brother-in-law, Andre, who was going to help them with real estate connections, is also very upset. Apparently, Vanessa had asked him to evaluate some properties for investment, including the house where you live. Did you know about this? This was new. I hadn't known Vanessa had gone so far as to ask Andre to evaluate my house for a potential sale. No, I didn't know that. Well, Andre is furious. He invested time and resources based on false information. He feels completely deceived. Which brings me to my main point. My family has decided that this perfect Christmas is going to become a family intervention. Vanessa will have to explain every lie, every deception, every manipulation. A family intervention. This was even better than I had planned. Not only would Vanessa have to face the logistical disaster of her party, but she would also have to account for years of deceit before her entire family. And what about the other relatives? They're all aware of the situation now. By dinner tonight, the entire family will know the truth about Vanessa. And does she know? Not yet. But she's about to. I could hear voices rising in the background. Things were clearly escalating at my house. Mrs. Patricia, I have to go deal with this situation. But I want you to know that my family respects you enormously for enduring this for so long and for having the dignity to walk away. Thank you, Fernando. That means a great deal to me. One more thing. When you're ready to return, we hope to meet you properly. The real Patricia, not the employee Vanessa pretended you were. It will be a pleasure. I hung up and leaned back in my chair, feeling deep, warm satisfaction. At my house, Vanessa's world of lies was crumbling piece by piece, exactly as I had planned. That evening, I hired a discreet car service to drive me through my neighborhood, just to observe from a safe distance. The scene I found surpassed my wildest expectations. There were several rental cars parked haphazardly, and multiple grocery bags were scattered on the front porch, clearly abandoned mid-crisis. Through the windows, I could see silhouettes moving in agitated patterns. It was like watching a telenovela in real time, only 1,000 times more satisfying. My phone vibrated. It was a text from Camilla. Mrs. Patricia, could you call me? I need to ask about additional documents. I called immediately. Mrs. Patricia, she said, her voice tense. I'm reviewing my sister's financial situation, and it's worse than we thought. I just discovered she's been using Daniel's name and credit information to open accounts he doesn't know about. This could be considered identity fraud. This was new information. Does Daniel know? We just told him 2 hours ago. He's in shock. He keeps saying it must be a misunderstanding. Camilla, I have to ask something delicate. Did you know Vanessa told your family that I was considering making her the beneficiary of my will? The question hit me like lightning. What? Yes. She told us you were planning to leave her the house and a significant part of your savings. She used that as collateral for some of the loans she took out from family members. The betrayal was even deeper than I had imagined. Camilla, I can assure you that is completely false. My will does not include Vanessa as a beneficiary of anything. I suspected as much, but she used that story to borrow over $30,000 from some of our cousins on the East Coast. $30,000 in debt that I was supposedly going to cover with my death. It was so twisted, so maliciously calculated. How is Vanessa reacting to all this? I asked. There was a long pause. She's in complete denial. She keeps insisting it's all a misunderstanding, that you're being vengeful because you felt left out of the Christmas plans. Of course, even when confronted with irrefutable evidence, Vanessa was still trying to play the victim. And the Christmas celebration? Camilla laughed bitterly. What Christmas? Vanessa ordered pizza for 28 people because she didn't know how to cook anything else. We're eating off paper plates because she can't find the good china. Instead of celebrating, we're having the most intense family confrontation of our lives. Pizza for 28. The irony was delicious. What do you plan to do now? I asked. Some of us are leaving tomorrow. This isn't the family reunion we expected. It's an intervention. A few of us are staying to make sure she understands the consequences of her actions. All family loans are being called in immediately. The financial support for Daniel's business is gone, and we'll be informing other family members to protect them from future manipulations. It was poetic justice. And Daniel? That's the saddest part. I think he truly knew nothing about her lies. He's devastated. My poor son. But I also knew this was the only way he would ever open his eyes. Camilla, there's one more thing you should know. When I return home, and I will return soon, I'll be making some significant changes. Vanessa will no longer have unrestricted access to my house. There will be new rules, new boundaries, and new consequences for disrespect. That sounds perfect. It's time she learned to live in the real world. I hung up and asked the driver to take me back to the resort. Tomorrow would be my triumphant return. The morning of December 24th dawned cold but bright. I packed my bags calmly and prepared for the final confrontation. Before leaving the resort, I called my attorney, Lawrence. This is Patricia. Are all the documents we discussed ready? Perfectly ready, Patricia. The changes to the will are notarized. The amendment to the house deed is registered. And the new residency agreements are ready for your signature. Perfect. I'll see you in 90 minutes at my house. Are you sure you want to do this on Christmas Eve? Lawrence, there's no more perfect time. It's time my family learned the true meaning of gratitude. The car service dropped me off at 9:45 in the morning. I opened the door with my key, and the house fell silent. Patricia. Daniel's voice was incredulous, almost hopeful. Yes, I'm back. He appeared first with deep, dark circles under his eyes. Behind him came Vanessa, a version I had never seen before. No makeup, wrinkled clothes, eyes swollen from crying. Then came the rest of her family. Fernando, stern and imposing. Camila holding a folder of documents. Andre and his wife, Gabriela, their faces etched with disappointment. Mrs. Patricia, Fernando said, extending a hand respectfully. It's an honor to finally meet you properly. We're deeply sorry to have met under these circumstances. The honor is mine, Fernando. And don't worry. Sometimes, the truth needs to emerge dramatically. Just then, the doorbell rang. It was Lawrence, my attorney. Lawrence, thank you for coming. I believe we're all ready for the conversation we've been postponing for years. Lawrence entered, his presence immediately adding legal weight to the room. Good morning, he said professionally. I'm Lawrence Chen, Mrs. Patricia's attorney. I understand there are some family and financial matters that require clarification. Vanessa grew even paler. Why is there an attorney here? Because after 6 years of emotional abuse, financial manipulation, and total lack of respect, I've decided I need legal protection, I replied with icy calm. Legal protection from what? Daniel asked, genuinely confused. From your wife's attempts to use my future death as collateral for loans. From her plans to convince you to sell my house to pay off her compulsive shopping debts. From her unauthorized use of your credit information. Need I continue? The silence was absolute. Vanessa slumped onto the sofa, finally understanding her world of lies had completely collapsed. Lawrence, I said, shall we proceed? Very well. First, the testament changes. Mrs. Patricia has amended her will to ensure that ownership of this house can never be sold or mortgaged without her explicit consent, even after her death. The house will be transferred into a family trust that protects Daniel's interests but prohibits any financial speculation. Vanessa began to cry silently. Daniel looked shocked, but also, for the first time, genuinely ashamed. Second, Lawrence continued, the new terms of residency. Vanessa no longer has unrestricted access rights to this property. Any visit must be coordinated in advance and approved by Mrs. Patricia. What does that mean exactly? Daniel asked, his voice trembling. It means your wife can no longer walk into my house whenever she pleases, give orders about my food and my time, or assume I'll be her domestic servant. Mom, I never knew that you never knew. In 6 years, you never noticed that every time you had guests, I did all the work while she took the credit. You never wondered why your wife never cooked or cleaned, but always talked about what a perfect hostess she was. Daniel bowed his head, finally confronting years of willful blindness. Fernando approached Vanessa, his voice heavy with paternal disappointment. Vanessa, our family gave you opportunities, trust and support based on lies. You made us unwitting accomplices in your disrespect toward a woman who deserved our admiration, not our contempt. Uncle, I never wanted... You never wanted what? To lie about your income, to commit identity fraud, to promise inheritances that weren't yours to give, to treat your mother-in-law like hired help? Vanessa had no answer. There's one more thing, I continued, looking directly at Vanessa. You will pay back every penny you borrowed using lies about my supposed inheritance. You will personally apologize to every family member you deceived. And you will learn to live within your actual means, not in the fantasy you built at my expense. And if she doesn't? Camilla asked. Then she'll face the appropriate legal consequences for identity fraud and fraudulent obtainment of credit, Lawrence finished, closing his briefcase. I addressed the entire family gathered in my living room. For 6 years, I sacrificed my dignity because I thought I was keeping the family together. But I learned something important. A family built on disrespect and manipulation isn't a family at all. It's a toxic structure that hurts everyone involved. I looked specifically at Daniel. Son, I love you, but you have to decide what kind of man you want to be, one who allows his wife to abuse his mother, or one who defends respect and honesty in his family. Finally, I looked at Vanessa, and you have to decide if you want to be a responsible adult who faces the consequences of her actions, or continue to be a manipulative child who expects others to solve the problems she creates. The clock struck 11 o'clock on Christmas Eve. Now, I said with a smile I had been saving for months, those who wish to stay for a Christmas based on honesty, respect, and genuine gratitude are welcome. Those who prefer to continue living in fantasies and manipulations may leave. For the first time in 6 years, I was in total control of my house, my life, and my future. And I had never felt such sweet freedom.